The day after I buried my wife, my son slid a care home brochure across the kitchen table. Not next month, not after I had time to breathe. The day after we lowered Helen into the ground. The brochure was cheap, glossy, and folded at the corners. Smiling elderly people stood in a fake garden beneath the words, comfort, care, community. My daughter-in-law, Rachel, leaned against my refrigerator with her arms crossed. Then she said, "We already called a realtor for this house." For a few seconds I did not say anything. My son, Brandon, stared into his coffee. That hurt more than Rachel's words. Because Rachel had never loved me. But Brandon was the boy I taught to ride a bike in that driveway. The boy Helen stayed awake for when he came home late. The boy who stood beside her hospital bed 3 weeks earlier and promised he would take care of me. And now he could not even look me in the eye. My name is Arthur Bell. I am 73 years old. I worked for 38 years as a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing plant outside Pittsburgh. I spent most of my life fixing things quietly. Broken pipes, faulty wiring, doors that would not close, machines everyone needed but nobody understood. But nothing in my life prepared me for sitting in my own kitchen one day after losing my wife of 44 years, while my family discussed removing me from my own home. Helen had been gone for less than 24 hours. Her slippers were still beside our bed. Her favorite yellow cardigan was still hanging over the chair in the living room. And there was still half a container of her homemade soup in the freezer, because neither of us had been able to finish it before she went into hospice. Rachel tapped the brochure with one manicured finger. "It is actually a nice place," she said. "They have staff around the clock, meals, activities. You won't have to be alone." I finally looked at her. "I am not moving into a care home." Her smile tightened. "Arthur, you cannot stay here forever. I have stayed here for 31 years. This isn't about whether you can stay here," she said. "It is about what makes sense." There it was. Not grief, not concern. Sense. The kind of sense people suddenly discover when they see a house, a savings account, and an old man standing between them and both. I turned to Brandon. "Did you know she called a realtor?" He rubbed his forehead. "Dad, we were only looking at options." "Options for what?" His eyes stayed on the table. "For the future." The future. Helen had been gone one day, and they were already planning mine without me in it. I could have shouted. I could have told them to get out. I could have reminded Brandon that his mother and I paid his college tuition, helped with his first house, and covered the hospital bills when Rachel had complications after their daughter was born. Instead, I stood up. Rachel looked almost relieved. I think she thought I was going to my room to pack, but I walked past them, past the living room, past the hallway where Helen kept framed pictures of Brandon as a little boy, and straight to the freezer. You may be wondering why. The truth is, Helen had always been more prepared than I was. During the last few months of her illness, she had started leaving notes everywhere. A note in the pantry telling me when to replace the water filter. A note inside the laundry room cabinet reminding me which detergent she used. A note taped under the coffee maker that said, "Arthur, please do not ruin perfectly good coffee trying to be efficient." That was Helen. Even dying, she was still taking care of the small things. But 2 weeks before she passed, she'd said something strange. "If anything ever feels wrong after I'm gone, check the freezer." I laughed at the time. "The freezer?" She smiled. "The bottom drawer, behind the peas." I'd not thought about it again until Rachel said the word realtor. I opened the freezer door. Cold air rolled over my hands. Behind the frozen vegetables, tucked inside an old plastic container labeled chicken stock, was a sealed envelope. My name was written across the front in Helen's handwriting. Arthur. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a short letter and a small brass key taped to the page. The letter said, "My love, if Brandon and Rachel are trying to rush you out of this house, do not panic. Go to Mr. Lowell. Bring him this key. He has everything you need." Mr. Lowell was Helen's attorney. He had handled our wills years earlier. I folded the note, put it in my pocket, and turned around. Rachel was standing in the kitchen doorway. "What are you doing?" she asked. I looked at her. "Making dinner plans." Then I walked past her and left the house. Now answer this honestly in the comments. Do you think Brandon was grieving and weak, Or did he know exactly what Rachel was planning? Write weak if you think he was being controlled. Write new if you think silence made him just as guilty. Mr. Lowell's office was closed, but he answered his personal phone on the second ring. When I told him Helen's name, his voice changed. "Arthur," he said quietly, "I was wondering when you would call." The next morning, I met him at his office before Rachel had finished posting pictures from Helen's funeral on social media. Mr. Lowell placed a thick folder on his desk. "Your wife came to see me 6 months ago," he said. "She was worried." "Worried about what?" He opened the folder. "Your home, your finances, and the pressure Brandon and Rachel had been putting on her." My stomach dropped. "Helen never told me. Not once." Mr. Lowell showed me messages Rachel had sent Helen during her treatment. At first, they sounded harmless. "Have you thought about downsizing? This house is a lot for Arthur to manage. Brandon and I could really use the equity someday." Then the messages became colder. "You should make things easier for everyone before you're gone." I read that line 3 times. Before you're gone. Helen had been fighting cancer, and Rachel was already measuring the value of the walls around her. Mr. Lowell slid another document toward me. Helen had changed our estate plan. The house was now protected by an irrevocable living trust in my name only. No sale could happen without my written consent. No one could borrow against it. No one could claim that I was incapable of making decisions unless 2 independent doctors confirmed it. And the brass key. It opened a safe deposit box containing copies of every financial transfer Brandon and Rachel had requested from us over the past 5 years. Rent help, car payments, credit card bailouts, business loans, nearly $280,000. I sat there in silence. Mr. Lowell watched me carefully. "Your wife did not want you to know while she was alive," he said. "She believed you deserved to spend her last months loving her, not worrying about their intentions." That broke something in me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Helen had been dying, and she had still been trying to protect me. By the time I got home, Rachel was waiting in the living room. Brandon sat on the couch. The brochure was still on the kitchen table. Rachel stood up. "We need to discuss the realtor." "No," I said, "you need to listen." I placed Helen's letter on the table. Then I placed the trust documents beside it. Finally, I laid down a printed copy of Rachel's messages to Helen. The room went silent. Brandon picked up the pages first. I watched his face change. Confusion, then disbelief, then something that looked like shame. Rachel reached for the papers. "Those messages are being taken out of context." I looked at her. "What context makes it acceptable to ask a dying woman to make life easier for you before she is gone?" She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Brandon looked at her. "You sent this to Mom?" Rachel's voice shook. "I was trying to help." "No," I said, "you were trying to hurry." Then I turned to my son. "And you sat here yesterday while your wife gave me a brochure for a care home." He looked at the floor. "I did not know about the messages, but you knew about the realtor." His silence answered me. That was the moment I understood something difficult. Betrayal is not always a cruel sentence. Sometimes it is a person saying nothing while someone else tries to take what belongs to you. I told them they had 30 days to move out. Rachel started crying. Brandon asked me not to make a rash decision. I almost laughed. A rash decision? My wife had been planning for 6 months because she saw what I refused to see. This was not rash. This was late. In the weeks that followed, Brandon called often. At first he called because he was scared. Then slowly he began calling because he was ashamed. There is a difference. Rachel moved in with her sister. Brandon rented a small apartment near his work. For the first time in years, he paid his own bills. And for the first time in years, he came to see me without asking for anything. One Sunday, he stood in the kitchen where Helen used to make pancakes for his daughter. He looked at the yellow cardigan still hanging over the chair. "I failed her," he said. I nodded. "Yes." His eyes filled. "I failed you too." I did not forgive him that day. Not because I hated him, because forgiveness without change is just permission to repeat the same wound. But I told him he could earn his way back. Not with flowers, not with speeches, with actions. The house is quiet again now. Some mornings I still reach for Helen before I fully wake up. Some nights I stand in the kitchen and stare at the freezer door longer than I need to. But I do not feel helpless anymore. Helen left me more than a note. She left me a reminder. Love does not mean giving people permission to take everything from you. And family does not get to decide that you are inconvenient just because they are impatient for what you own. The day after I buried my wife, my son gave me a care home brochure. But my wife had already given me something stronger, the truth. And once I found it, nobody in that house could pretend they did not know where I stood.